All right, welcome in. Let's get Facebook flowing in here and we can get this show on the road. A lot of draft conversation today. We got the wheel spinning, 1 and 2. All right, welcome in. It's Wednesday, the 9th. The draft is hurtling towards us. A lot of fun, and we're going to do an episode of Broncos for Breakfast Wednesday morning, 6:30, 7:30 a.m. Mountain Time. We're here. How you doing, Eric? I see that you are preparing still ever more for the volcano tour. What's the name of this volcano?
Mount Spur.
Mount Spur.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last time it erupted was the year I was born, so that's a an awesome sign for me. I always joke that I was born on a dark and stormy night when the earth split open and I was spat out of hell. And I use the volcano as part of the reasoning for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm still preparing for it. It's just wait and see. That's what all the the whatever the scientific name is for the people who study it.
Volcanologist.
Yeah, that's what they're all saying is at this point. It's just a matter of wait and see any day now. So just got to keep prepping for it. And it also all depends on the wind. Like we can get covered in ash if depending on the windfall, and if it not. Last time it happened, we got lucky. The windfall, it went around us. So like there's another part of where I live that's another city that's basically is part of it. And they got covered. Another area that's a little bit south of us, they got covered, and a little area east of us got a little bit covered, but we were fine. West, south, and east, nope, they got covered. Farther north did. So just waiting and see. We got the masks. Still have to get pantyhose for the car to protect the air filters. So that's the only thing that we have left that we have to get to finish preparing for it.
I'm surprised you don't have pantyhose. You take me as the type. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. I'm a big fan of volcanoes out here in the PNW. I have aspirations one day to climb Mount Rainier. I probably would have by now if I didn't have a kid in the last, and a pregnant partner. But I've climbed 2 of the volcanoes out here. I've done Mount St. Helens twice. I've done Mount Adams as well. Probably next up on the list will be Mount Baker. I'd love to climb Hood and Glacier as well. So a lot of fun out here, a lot of good stuff. And summer is coming, but the draft first. Denver Luke coming in here. Appreciate you. Thank you for coming in over on YouTube. Mike Thompson. Awesome to see you. We got our guy David Youngkin. David, hope you're doing well. Appreciate David. David is always early, and he'll head out some point in beginning or middle of the show, but no matter what, he's always coming in and saying hello. So appreciate you, David. Mike also says, hopefully some good Broncos talk will wash whatever the heck the Nuggets are doing out of my mouth. I couldn't tell you guys what the Nuggets are doing. I feel like I'm so ingrained into the football stuff. Like I'm so deep into football and draft coverage. I don't have time to be hockey, basketball. Like it's Iowa football, Denver Broncos football, NFL draft at large. And I'm a fair weather St. Louis Cardinals fan. When I grew up, my dad had like the satellite network. So we watched like every game after class. And that was during like the Pujols, Molina, Roland Edmonds heyday. So a lot of fun. Harder to pay attention to baseball. It's such a local sport. So I know, and Eric, I know you're not a fan, so we don't have to talk crap about baseball. Noah coming in here. Good morning. Good to see you, Noah. I got Micah, and Micah, I didn't know where you were from Manchester out there. Are you a United fan, a City fan? What's going on? Good to see you. Jason's in the house, one of our big time Broncos and draft fans. So appreciate Jason. Says, I like Mel Kiper's newest 2-round mock with Denver getting Tetaroa McMillan and Quinshon Judkins. So Eric, we talked about this a little bit last night. I don't have the episode being about it, but I do think that it'd be worth to get into a little bit. I know you're not as big of a fan of Judkins, but if the Broncos did this for me, I'd give him an A. I think you get probably the highest potential X receiver in the class. Somebody who does good at yards after the catch. He can play any single wide receiver alignment in my position. And with how much, we'll talk about it in a second, but with how much Mike Klis is banging the drum for 3 down back, not like anything else. It has to be a 3 down back. Judkins is one of the ones that I think fits the profile. And I have questions about the vision. I liked him a lot more at Ole Miss. Is that because the space dealing in the offense? It's hard to say. That Ole Miss offense is Looney Tunes stuff. But all in all, I'd be very happy about what the Broncos did with this one if it came that way to be at the end of April.
Yeah, one of my biggest issues with Judkins is that the vision is a big deal for me. It's a big deal with any running back. That's one of the things I value the most. But outside of that, it's for a bigger back, he doesn't break a lot of tackles and doesn't do a lot after contact. And that is something that you, to an extent, you can separate that from offensive line play. And, going back and watching through Ohio State, it wasn't like he was getting met with multiple defenders consistently behind the line of scrimmage. It was one, and then he was struggling to break through that and, do something afterwards. And that to me is the concern there. But at 51, it's fine. I haven't seen the mock, so I don't know who was still left on the board. I don't know what the board looked like. So it's one of those I can live with. And Tedrow McMillan at 20, I'm fine with it as well. I mean, I actually really like it. I know we've talked a lot more about Emeka Egbuka than Tedrow McMillan, especially me on Friday night, this last Saturday night when I joined with Dylan. It was more Egbuka, but Tedrow McMillan, he's my top receiver. I'm not counting Travis Hunter as a receiver. And so, if you get the top receiver at it in a situation where Cortland Sutton's going to be 31, just turned 30, something like that.
He's going to be 30.
And then he's on the wrong side, or he's on the 1 year left on his deal, no contract extension yet, and we're not going to get any answer to that until later this year, a couple months from now. So it still is one of the situations where you prepare for in case you can't get something done with Sutton. You prepare for in case Sutton, the age father time catches up with him, and also giving you a good number 2 with him, being able to rotate number 3. Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, they can all step up, yes, but it's not something I like to bet on. We talked about it on this Monday, and they all more fit that mold of a number 3, number 4 than they do a number 2.
Mm-hmm. Out of all the body types they have there, probably I think Mims is the most valuable and has the chance to have the most value, but Vele has the highest chance to climb into a number 2, if that makes sense. Like Mims, given his size and his lack of route running, granted he's still very young, was one of the youngest players in the NFL. Maybe that comes, but Denver really unlocked him once he became this kind of more gadgety, like he's a vertical threat and an underneath scheme touch guy. Yeah. Middle of the field, slot, route running, hasn't come yet. We did see that big contested catch in that Bengals game, but that's not really littered across his tape. So I think Vele has a chance to develop into a number 2, whether it be big slot, Z, X, similar, but McMillan can do everything better from that profile. So I would be happy about it. And again, it gives you options. Maybe the Broncos would rather go running back at 20. Maybe they'd rather go tight end if they fell there. But alas, you have Genty coming off the board at 6. You have Warren coming off the board at 10. You have Hampton coming off the board at 12. You have Loveland coming off the board at 14 in Mel Kiper's mock. So they're all gone. Also, you have Matthew Golden going to the Arizona Cardinals at 16, I believe, not 17. So Tedrow McMillan, the 6th offensive skill position on quarterback off the board. We'll see. We got Quentin Caldwell. Good to see you. Greg Smith over here. I appreciate Greg because not only does he come in and say hello with all the breakfast emojis, but he drops a thumbs up on the way in as well. If you guys are joining us on the Facebook side of things, make sure you click the thumbs up. Micah says, Merry Beastmas, everyone. I'll get a chance to check that out tomorrow, I hope. Judson's coming in again, one of our newer consistent conversators here. So appreciate you. Good morning. Jason says, Nick's Ron Jeremy stash is getting thicker. God bless. That's what we're going for. This will be here until Saturday morning when my wife lands back. William says, guys, good evening. Safety sign, quite cheap risk, but how do we feel about this? Also, do you see any player trades coming in? I think depending on how the draft falls, you could see a day 3 running back trade for the Broncos, potentially also still a wide receiver trade. Again, it all depends on how the board falls in the end. Those are the positions I'll be checking out for. As far as the safety, Franklin, special teams, what does it mean for Key? What does it mean for Delarian Turner-Yell? What does it mean for, the big JL Skinner? Like those are the guys we're talking about there. Like their tails should be up after this one because this is a safety brought in that fits that profile, especially Turner-Yell and Skinner.
Yeah, and I'm not very familiar with Franklin. There's been some conversation about the potential if he steps up on defense of moving on from DJ Locke. But to me, it's more of that 4th safety. That's Devin Key. That's Delarian Turner-Yell. That's JL Skinner. And with the special teams focus, Darren Rizzi going and getting another guy for his unit specifically. And then is there potential for more from there? And that's where the PJ Locke conversation comes in because Denver can cut him and say $4.5 million against the salary cap. And that's the only reason why you even have that conversation of him being able to rise up to it is because of the contract situation with PJ Locke.
Yeah. I don't know if this Franklin has the ability to actually on the field safety play, but again, maybe it's Key steps up, like Key stepping up and taking the lock spot, the going savings there, and then you have a room for a fourth safety. So it's Lock is replaced by Franklin, but really it's Key moving up. So again, we'll see. You have to have, how many guys is it on your roster? 90 something for camp. It'll be whittled down to 53 plus whatever the practice squad is.
And
Franklin's,
I believe technically Denver can get away with 91 because I think they can still use the international exception for Thomas Yasman, the tight end.
Yes, man. Well, here's my yes, man. Shiloh coming in here. Says, for fans, Genty and Warren are not falling. Best case realistic options are Hampton, Loveland, Harmon, Graham, Judkins, Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Mason Taylor, Walter Nolan, Norman Lott. And then 85, he says Neil Martinez, Giddens, Ferguson, Helm, and Kay Walker. Yeah, a lot of options here. I mean, I have my mock draft 10.0 coming out here, and I've used a lot of these players already. My rule on these mocks is I'm using a new player every single time because it's boring if it's this. I get so bored of the same players over and over again in the talking points. Like, what's the point of mock drafts if we're not going to have like philosophical discussions about what the value is and the fit of these guys and what it means for the team? So out of all of these, maybe you're talking about a different player, but Mason Graham at 20, that doesn't seem to be anywhere close to consensus. He's going pick 5 overall more than anywhere, and I'd be pretty shocked if he fell out of the top 10. Second round here, you list a number of good players, I think, that are fits. I think Norman Lott's probably going to fall closer to 85 than 51 because he has a foot injury and he has a very few snaps. But, man, his burst is awesome. If you want like a third down interior rusher, he can be there. And then out of your running backs next there, I don't know who Kay Walker is. That one's not – I just keep thinking Kenneth Walker. But any of these ones would make a lot of sense. I think Neal is going to be a day 3 player. Giddens is right on the cusp. Helm is probably going to be a day 3 player after coming in. It's not just the testing. He was also really small as well. So small and not explosive, despite it was the jumps that were bad too. But yeah, Denver has so many options. And one thing that makes me really excited, I don't think Kuiper talks about it in his mock draft, but he talked about it on a interview, trade down options for the Broncos. And over the last week, there's been some growing buzz from insiders about the Broncos at least listening or considering a trade down from 20. So it takes 2 to tango. I always say that. You can't just like give it up. Depends on how the board falls, blah, blah, blah. There's a chance. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I think that there is a reason why we've kind of heard that growing thing of Denver possibly trading down, as we've heard a growing consensus of Omarion Hampton going in the top 17, 18, not being there at 20, basically. That seems to be correlated. But yeah, I mean, it just happens, and there's a lot of options. And Charlotte comes in and saying that it's Dion Walker, not Kay Walker. Just remember the name wrong.
Makes sense.
Which that might be 85 at this point. Seems to be a little high for Dion Walker with stuff that's going around with him. There's been some stuff about his inability to keep his weight consistent. Some issues with the Kentucky nutritionist and dietitian that they have to employ about, that helps these players try to keep their weight in check, and just things like that. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of options on the board. There's plenty of options going throughout of that list of names. There's a lot of guys that you can always nitpick, like Mason Taylor at 51. I mean, he's getting round 1 talk, has been going back to the Super Bowl. And if he doesn't go round 1, then he's probably going somewhere early round 2, probably somewhere in the top 40, top 45 at the very least. Walter Nolan, same kind of situation. He used to be a round 1 player. Now he's kind of fallen. Now he's talked about as an early day 2 guy. So that's where that going back to that trade down conversation, that's where those guys can really come in as well. And then there's always the possibility of trading up. That's what Sean Payton has shown that he likes to do. He's just throughout his whole career as a head coach, even going back to the Saints. And with the Broncos, it's always been that day 2 trade up. It's been very consistent. Granted, it's been a short amount of time under Sean Payton of trading up for somebody on day 2 or even early day 3.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with it. I'm about it. Heath says, Nick, we need to talk. You never drop 100% anymore. I used to say 100% all the time. You're right. How are you supposed to know with certainty the football takes and draft takes you have? Well, it's kind of funny that I'd say 100%. Just agreeing with somebody, but I'm also somebody like, well, anything can happen, right? Like when my little kind of get out of not bad mouthing Drew Lock, was like, oh, we never know what the future is going to be. Like, I don't really see it, but like, things can happen. Improbability can happen. Miracles happen. Statistical miracles happen all the time. Not really, but when the sample size is large enough, things can happen. So yeah, that's where we're at. Conga, if Alfred Collins or Braden Swinson are there at 51, then I'm running to the podium. First time I've heard of Swinson hype here for the Broncos. Kind of a long edge rusher from LSU. I gotta say, Conga, I like Swinson. I'm glad he's getting some hype. I've had to do my edge rusher work because of the covering the Atlanta Falcons with Scott. So Swinson's somebody I'm definitely in on in day 2. He's all of a sudden getting, I think, proper hype. I also like Gelati. I feel like even though he had a down year statistically this year from Louisville, he's somebody who, like, round 3, I mean, his traits and his get off and production is pretty good. So Gelati's a shout out. I will say, though, Conga, my LSU defensive lineman of choice for the Broncos, even though he'll go later than Swinson, I really like the potential fit of Savion Jones in Denver. I don't know if there's background stuff there, but 6'5", 280, ran and jumped really well. And at the Senior Bowl game itself, if you go back and watch the Senior Bowl game, Savion Jones was a freaking menace on the inside. And I think his profile, he's almost got 34-inch arm length. I think he would be an awesome 4-eye to develop behind Franklin Myers and then give yourself an option for that fit. I think 85 is a little early. I don't know. The testing profile is really good, though. So I think 85 is probably like the ceiling. I'm expecting him to go somewhere from like 90 to 120. But spoiler alert, just because I only have 3-round mocks, I tossed him in there in this one because I really wanted to highlight him because I think his fit, the traits he has, LSU defense being just completely meandered with talent, marooned, if you will. I like Savion Jones a lot, so I wanted to give him a shout out.
Yeah, it's a funny thing that you mentioned him as, sitting behind John Franklin Myers and developing him, because that has been a comparison that I've heard a lot made between Savion Jones. He's very John Franklin. John Franklin Myers, that they need to sit there and spend some time in the weight room to develop the body a little bit, to bulk up a little bit with him. And but he also, if you keep him at the weight he is, he has that ability to be kind of a stand-up edge rusher in certain downs and situations, and then drop down and play that 4-eye, 7 to 4-eye, depending on the down and situation. Run defender as a 7 technique, then more pass rush situations down into that 4-eye. So yeah, he's a fun one because the Broncos could look at somebody like that. When you look at their edge room, they're really missing that high quality run defender from the position. And so when you get somebody like Savion Jones, or if they wanted to go earlier and get like a Landon Jackson, that is somebody that can help out there, and then give you that sub down or sub package passing down pass rusher inside. So I'm glad you highlighted Savion Jones. He's not one that has made it into one of my mocks, but there's been multiple times where it's like, I want to get him in, and there's a certain area that I have him, and it's that 4th round pick. And with all my mock drafts, I always use a mock draft simulator, and he always seems to go between like 100 and 115.
Yeah. Yep. So I wanted to get him in there just because I really like the fit for the Broncos. So shout out to Savion Jones. And you mentioned Landon Jackson. I really want to like him more. I think I like him more at edge. His tape at 4-eye is not good. I like watching him, like, man, he's just I can't do it for that one. But we'll see. Peter Miller, hi all. Good to see you, Peter. Gatorade Gaming's in the house. Great to see you. We got our guy, Michael Ronquillo. Somebody hit the air horn, bow, 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 with a super chat. Thank you so much. Good morning to you. Go Broncos, go Bo Breakfast. Great to see you. Thank you so much for the super chat. Hope you're doing well. Travis is in the house listening after the fact, fellas. Just hoping we had some great pieces in the draft. The draft is hope that springs eternal. So no matter what, we'll see that. Morning, folks. Had a dream last night. The Broncos drafted a running back from Iowa State in the 1st round. I don't think there is one this year, so you don't have to worry about that. You can put that one away. Maybe this is a premonition, though. We talked about it earlier. The Broncos trading for a back. Maybe Breece Hall becomes available. Maybe the Jets shock everyone and go Genty, and then you get Hall for a 6th-round pick and a future 5 or something like that. We'll see. Jeremy in here. Glad to see people have brought out their crystal balls for the NFL draft. I loved it. Daniel Jeremiah's tweet the other day saying that there's 277 first-round picks if you ask the agents this season. So it's all talking points, fun to talk about until we see the actual our draft start falling. But We do deal in mock drafts. We love them. We don't want to badmouth them. Obviously, there are some that are better or worse than others. But Mike Klis, one of the best Broncos insiders there is, did a mock draft. And I loved what he did with his mock. It's his one mock of the year. Mike's mock draft for Denver. I think he released it on Monday or Friday or something like that. Saturday. I don't know. And he listed a bunch of different players' options per draft. So we're going to kind of go through it here. His big talking point leading into it again, it's something he's been highlighting, and I'm sure Mike has a good football mind, but also he doesn't speak over what he's heard too. Like this is an informed take, and he is really hammering home on the Broncos with a 3-down back. And we heard George Payton talk about like there's a lot of backs, there's not as many 3-down backs. So highlighting that early, and with that, he has the Broncos going with Obari and Hampton. After collecting a promising group of free agents, the Broncos are one position short of making it real with the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, and Bengals as one of the AFC's elite contenders. Assuming Genty isn't available and the cost isn't too great to trade up from 20 to inside the 10, Hampton is the pick. In a draft with dozen quality backs, Hampton's a 3-down do-it-all back, which Denver desperately needs. Hampton and Genty are the top of this tremendous running back class. So he has them. He lists other options, though, and I think it's important to talk about the order of these other options as well. He says Walter Nolan that is there. There are a couple other stacked positions in draft with one being defensive line. Oh, he got a mistake there, Klis. As the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles demonstrated last season, a team can never have too many impact defensive tackles or ends. Love that sentence. Nolan is elite. I don't know about that. He also talks about Derek Harmon there. And then he has a bonus of Emeka Egbuka and Luther Burden. So despite some Broncos insiders, even Klis, talking about wide receiver being much more day 2, day 3, he listed here as still a viable option, which shout out to him, because if you look at the team on paper, right, depending on how the board falls, wide receiver has to be in the conversation. Not have to draft a wide receiver, has to be in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the case. And it can be one of those situations where, Sean Payton, George Payton, they would like to wait a little bit on wide receiver and take advantage, because the issue with this class is at the top, right? That's the issue with the wide receiver class. It's not the depth. The depth is there. And I saw Benjamin Skolak talk about this a little bit. He's like, we can't ever say that there's a weak wide receiver class. It doesn't exist anymore. There can be weaker ones at the top, but the depth is always really good. And here the meat of the draft is, day 2. So yeah, it's worth talking about at round 1, because you never know how the board's going to fall. Denver could want to get it later, but the board may not fall that way. And, Tet may be the option, Egbuka may be the option, maybe a trade down, and Luther Burden is an option. Like those are all the situations that you have to sit there and at least consider. You can't write it off as a 100% guarantee they will not draft the wide receiver round 1 in March and early April, because the way we don't know how the draft's going to fall. That may be the best player available, and that may end up being like, well, we're going to go this way. And we always talk about quotes and everything. Well, let's listen to what George Payton said. We can find a good starting running back in rounds 2 to 6. So maybe that's that situation of board doesn't fall. Hampton and Genty are gone. Harmon, Nolan, maybe they don't want to, Harmon's gone. Nolan, maybe not at 20, maybe after a trade down. So they trade down. Nolan goes somewhere between those 2 picks, and now it's wide receiver. So it's always worth talking about. But yeah, the order of it's very interesting. Omari and Hampton, we've talked about him at length about it. I'm not overly a fan of it at 20. I have serious issues with his vision, but I get it. And I fully expect that if he is there, that at 20 for him to be the pick for the Broncos. I get it. He has the chance to be a 3-down back. I'd like to see a little bit more as a receiver out of the backfield as well. But again, I get it. And that, again, expected pick. It's fine. It's something that they need, because they need to find a running game. So it's all fine. But again, I like the fact that he threw wide receiver there at the end, just because there's been so much of no wide receiver at all, not until day 3. And that to me has always been a little silly.
Yeah, and the way the Broncos needs stack up, for the most part, you're going to get your best ROI day 2. And typically that's not the case for wide receiver, but in this class specifically, with the depth, a lot of wide receiver 2 or 3 types, if you're looking to add a young wide receiver, again, how much more value are you going to get from Emeka Egbuka at 20 compared to Jack Besh at 51, or Jalen Knoll, Iowa State, or Jalen Royals later. I think, again, maybe that's, just like playing the conservative side without having conviction on a singular wide receiver. But I think the depth or the difference in talent is not as great this season at wide receiver, which lends itself further to trading back. So we'll see. I know our guy Judson loves Chisholm in the 6th round. So he's somebody. What about Marcus Yarns? Haven't heard a Yarns call out there. Another kind of guy out there. We have Micah talking about Savion Williams from TCU. He could be an option at 85 if you're looking for, gosh, we need something beyond a joker on that one. Ace, he's really weird. I wish he had a little better hands out there, but he's a unique one. I saw that. Gosh, who was it? One of the Matt Waldman had Savion Williams as like his 5th highest rated running back. So interesting one, way over Hampton, who he had at 10 overall. So fun all the same. I do, again, Mike Klis talking about wide receiver there. The one thing I'll push back on first round, I think tight end still got to be in the conversation. If he's going to mention Hampton and Genty at this point, considering, will either of them be there? It's the same thing with Warren and Loveland for me. Will either of them be there? If they are, I think we have to have a conversation. I think you're fine going into the season with your position, but Troutman's entering a contract season. Lucas Kroll is borderline camp fodder ability. One of those practice squad types, I think. Atkins is fine. He's fine as your 3rd or 4th, but if you have an ability to add a tight end that you love, and those top guys are like high and away, again, round 2, round 3 historically, but if you love those guys, same conversation with the running backs. So I just wanted to add them in there as well.
And on that, it's like you have Evan Ingram, 30 years old, 2-year contract, injury history. We've talked about that a lot. He's your tight end 1, which is more of a big slot receiver than tight end. And then you have two number 3 receivers. That's Nate Atkins' upside as being a number 3. That's where Adam Troutman is. And then you have Lucas Kroll, who is a camp body practice squad player who has been way overhyped. And so you still need to find somebody who can kind of be that number 2 instead of forcing one Atkins or Troutman to step up and eventually develop as a replacement for it, which is why Colson Loveland, I think, makes a little bit more sense for the Broncos than Tyler Warren. Although Tyler Warren, he fits more of that true number 2 as early on, and then you can go find somebody, in a year or 2 to eventually replace Evan Ingram. So it can work either way because Warren is more of that inline tight end. But it's one of those reasons too, is like why not just talking about tight end at round 1, but why talking about 2 rookie tight ends being brought in the draft is also a possibility, because you have a clump of guys that kind of be that big slot Evan Ingram potential replacement option. And then you have a bunch of guys that are more of that, maybe they can be a tight end 3, tight end 2 blocking inline guy and as well. And you have a clump of those guys there. And the clump kind of is like round 3 to round 4 for those big slots, and then round 4 to round 5 for those inline tight ends. And so it's definitely a conversation that still has to be had. Evan Ingram shouldn't erase tight end out of the picture for the Broncos at all.
And he doesn't overall in the draft for Mike Klis, but he does round 1 here. I just think you have to toss it in there if you're talking about those guys. I do think it's interesting you didn't mention Tedoroa McMillan also as an option. You talked about Burden and Egbuka, who feel like more like later round 1 to early round 2 guys. Kuiper had both of them falling to round 2. Here's one for you, Eric. He had Kenneth Grant falling all the way to like pick 42 or something. No. So interesting there to see what happens with Grant. But moving on here, round 2 for Mike Klis. He has Alfred Collins. His mock says if running back is the pick in the first round, one of the many defensive tackles and going in round 1 and 2 should be the next pick. Collins has a chance to dominate at the next level. Mike, I love you. I feel like, again, this goes against my harping of draft where, you do have positions you want, but at the end of the day, the talent and the individual grades should dictate. So like if the Broncos come out of round 1 and round 2 with a center in Marcus Mbau round 2 and a linebacker and Jihad Campbell, it's like, our needs. Like, well, if they end up being all pro long-term starters, I don't care. Draft the good players. You need to hit more than hit on generic fills of the players. But then he lists other options. Travion Henderson, running back Ohio State. The smartest play in this draft might be to trade back, another one, in the first, and then snag Henderson, who has a chance to become Peyton's next Alvin Kamara. I don't know if he's Alvin Kamara, but he'd definitely be a interesting pick. He also lists Quinshon Judkins. Then a bonus here. I start to really disagree with some of the areas where he lists these prospects. But he lists Devin Neal as an option for the Broncos at 51, which I would be very upset about. But he's just, running backs in general. So thoughts there?
Yeah, Devin Neal, he's a guy, day 3. There's been a lot of round 5 conversation going on with him. Just didn't test out well. Had one of the top running backs, just say not all all of them, but all these guys that we talk about as top 100 running backs, he was, I believe, the worst athletically, both by relative athletic score and by the NFL Network's combine IQ athletic metric that they have. I can't remember what they call what it's called.
Grass?
No. Oh. It's the NFL.com has their own athletic score thing that
is it Spark? That's like one that's been used at like high school camps forever.
It's not Spark. It's not Spark. I can't remember what it's called. It wouldn't take me but a second to pull it up.
That's okay. It's whatever.
But yeah, it's pretty low. And then you add in vision issues, and at least with Hampkin and Judkins, I have vision issues with them. They have the athleticism to help hide it a little bit. Mm-hmm. Devin Neal, you don't. Which is a big issue with there. Travion Henderson, it all depends on medicals with him. I've heard some very concerning stuff coming out of the combine about his ability to plant off that right foot. And that to me is a concern for a cutter type running back that Henderson is. But Alfred Collins in the second, I'd absolutely love it. You get yourself an elite run defender at the very least. I'm not overly sold on his untapped pass rush potential that I often hear talked about with him. Mm-hmm. But to an extent, I can see why they believe it. There are a few flashes on tape when you watch him as a pass rusher that can just be made a little bit more consistent, improving his timing on when to use certain pass rush moves. And just developing his pass rush arsenal and, developing his pad level and the use of leverage, all those can help. But I'm always concerned about it with a guy, especially with guys that big of, untapped potential. But elite run defender with what the Broncos have up on their defensive front would be nice, because he's a guy who can come in and 2-gap and almost demands double teams, which they don't have that guy right now. DJ Jones, he's a good run defender, but he doesn't demand double teams. Yeah. And that kind of sells out to an extent Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, and John Frankenmeyers. So Alfred Collins being added to this defensive front would be an exceptional thing for the unit overall as a run defense unit.
Yeah. Without a doubt. Just some other guys at the positions that he listed that I think are worth mentioning on the defensive line. He didn't mention Tyleik Williams, Ohio State guy who you mentioned Alfred Collins being a good run defender. I think Tyleik's probably the highest ranked run defender in the entire class, in my opinion. So he's one. Hopefully I'm not frozen out here. Give me a hello. Okay, good. You guys froze for a second. I don't know if it was me. Darius Alexander from Toledo, I think deserves a shout out. And one of my favorite underrated guys is Shamar Turner, who I feel like is getting a little bit lost in this class. I know he had to have a rod in his leg and he missed like the postseason all-star circuit because of that, but he has been moved across the line. He plays with unbelievable energy. He's almost one that you like worry about because he's had some personal fouls. I think there was a time where maybe it was Florida in 2023 where he was down and he swung at a guy's nards, which you don't love. You don't want that unless, it's an ad by Manscaped. But other than that, Shamar Turner is interesting. As far as the running backs listed day 2, again, I'm not about Neal that high, but yeah, I think, Caleb Johnson, 51, Dylan Sampson, 51, Damian Martinez, 51, probably around early, but I think all better than Neal. So moving along here, appreciate Eric's takes on this. We got Terrence Ferguson, round 3. He says the third deepest position on the draft is tight end, and even after citing Evan Ingram, it'd be wise to add another young talent. Ferguson is a local kid who had the advantage of playing with Bo at Oregon. Ferguson lit up the combine and had a pre-draft visit with the Broncos offensive assistant coaches at Dove Valley. He also lists Gunnar Helm, same thing, local kid, Harold Fanon, and then mentions Marcus Yarns and Cam Scatterbo. Marcus Yarns, it's a little early for me for the 5'9", 190 Marcus Yarns. If he's there round 6, I don't know if I'd round 3. Cam Scatterbo, I think 85 is like on the cusp of being too early compared to some of those other ones we talked about there, but I think he'll probably go with one of the last, like the compensatory picks round 3 to one of the first 20 picks round 4. I think that's probably his range, unless there's character background stuff. I know he got served at the combine because he injured a teammate in a golf cart accident or something, but The players there, interesting. I think Hampton, defensive lineman Collins, Darius Alexander, and then Ferguson would make a lot of people happy for the Broncos.
Yeah, Terrence Ferguson, it seems like one of those things where the Broncos would love for that to happen. They'd love to pair him up with Bo Nix, and he's one of those guys, I mentioned it, not much inline value there. There's some in certain, passing situations to just help create more of a mismatch with Evan Ingram out in the slot. But he's one of those guys that you're going to be looking at to develop to take over for Evan Ingram in 2 years. And, with tight ends typically taking 2 years to develop, and outside of, rare cases like Brock Bowers, it typically takes a little bit of time. So you get that time with Terrence Ferguson. There was a article from ESPN this morning, I believe, that talked about some players that had seemed to be very divided on by NFL scouts, and it was a little surprising to see Terrence Ferguson as one. I can't remember the reason why, but he was one of them, and it just caught my attention that he was part of that. The scouts are divided on. I'd have to pull it up and double check what it was, but again, just caught my attention.
And we have a Mike Klis tweet as a little bit ago. Besides running backs, the Broncos must be considering wide receiver for their pick at 20. They are scheduled to meet with speedy Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden today at a top 30 visit. Golden's making the rounds. So I'll leave that as that. If anybody, I've been banging that drum with some pushback on Twitter. So who knows? It has to, just looking at, it's not like inside stuff. It's me using my eyes and looking at the roster and the depth chart and being like, yeah, we have questions here. Rob Bucksbaum, good morning. He says, Broncos meeting with Golden today. Thoughts? Means the Broncos must be considering running wide receiver early because feels like they would need to. Nard alert. God. All right, moving forward here. Broncos' 4th round pick for Mike is Tez Johnson. Other options are Xavier Restrepo, probably too early. Kyle Williams, probably too late. And then lists Torrey Horton. So really leaning into those wide receivers there. Moving it forward. Round 6, Jake Majors. Other options mean Seth McLaughlin, Joshua Gray, Jay Higgins, LaQuint Allen, running back from Syracuse. Other options, Trevor Etienne, running back from Georgia. Tootin, running back from Virginia Tech, probably too late there, round 6. Jaden Blue, Texas. Quincy Riley, also listed as probably too late, cornerback from Louisville. And then he lists James Burnip, punter from Alabama, 6'6" punter. Goodness gracious. Also lists multiple punters here, as well as Cam Miller from Solon, Iowa, North Dakota State quarterback. So Iowa had a guy 15 minutes up the road, and they go with Cade McNamara and Spencer Petras. God bless it. That's frustrating. But all in all, I don't agree with all the specific ranges of the players, but it makes sense. All of it makes sense for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's the thing with the dart or with the draft. It's throwing darts at a dartboard and seeing where they land, especially when you're trying to project it. Because every single year we get those guys that and not even just in round 1. It's not just, Michael Penix going 8 overall to the Falcons. It's, Bruce Irvin going in the early 1st round. It's guys going into the 2nd round that we don't expect. 3rd round. It's all these, it happens every single year throughout the draft. So maybe we don't like, going back to Devin Neal. Maybe we don't like Devin Neal in the 2nd round. Maybe a team takes it. There's talk of it's not Devin Neal, but with Damian Martinez. He's a guy that we talk a lot about the 3rd round. Well, there's a lot coming out that if Dallas misses out on Genty or Hampton in the 1st round, then they're going to do whatever they can to get Martinez somewhere in the 2nd round, either taking him with their original pick or moving up from the 3rd round pick to get him. So there's always these things of like, we may not like them there, but teams, they have their own board. They have their own ways about going about it. They have their own analytics, their own metrics, their own desires, their own, own body types, archetypes, and that can always throw a wrench in it. And with Jadon Blue, I hound on his fumbles a lot. There might be a team, and it's you can kind of see it a little bit with Nick and I. Nick's fine taking him round 4. I wouldn't take him until round 6 because some teams are would be a little bit more okay with his big play potential, his receiving potential, and trying to cut out the fumbles or cut down the fumbles a little bit. Whereas the fumble rate for me is just a killer for me in his draft stock that just weighs him down so much, and it's not something I can overlook. So that's always a issue when we start talking about where guys are going to fall.
Troy trying to keep us here late today with a 1999. Keep us here late, Troy, for 1999 Supers. Absolutely. Who would you trade up for, and how high would you go for each of those players? if Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter fell to like the 9th pick, I'm probably calling, even though I don't like to give up future firsts, 20 and a future first, maybe to go get a guy who'd probably be top 5 in any class when Denver's probably not close to picking up there. It's certainly on the table, especially 2 premium positions as well. And if Genty falls to, how high can pick 20 and 51 get me? I guess that's the question. Would the 49ers be okay with 20 and 51 to go up to 11 to jump the Cowboys? Would the Saints be okay with that? Probably not. If they would, then that's how high I'd be willing, even though it's like everything goes against me. Deep class, but like I think Genty's different than Hampton all the same. And I could get behind that. I would understand just because of how that would totally change the offense and give you an identity piece. Like right now, the offense doesn't really have an identity piece besides the offensive line that it can run through. And I think Genty could be that guy. And that might gears up with going for it right now. So if 20 and 51 could get me up to 9 or 11, I'm in. If not, deep running back class, we're not desperate there.
Yeah, and even giving up 51 is tough. And especially in this draft class. I mean, I would rather give up 51 than a future first next year.
Yes, me too.
Or even a second next year. But it's still tough because, we've talked about it a lot. There's not many or I've talked about it a lot, at least. There's not many first round grades for me. There's not many first round grades from teams per multiple reports. But the meat of it is there's so many, top 100 picks. There's, 10 to 15 are first round grades. And then people are talking, there's over 80 second and third round grades. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to give up that day 2 picks because that's where many believe that the meat of this class is. It's in that second and third day. So like giving up 51 is tough. Giving up 85 is a little bit more doable, but that's obviously it's not going to get you up that far. I'm not sure 85 and 20 would get you higher than 17 or 18. And
I think 15 potentially in this class. Falcons are desperate for picks. Also,
and that's one thing I was gonna say is like it also depends on what team you're talking to.
Yeah,
like
15 possibly.
Yeah, 15 possibly, as the Falcons are desperate for picks. And then the Rams, they're desperate to move down. So maybe 20 and 51 could be enough for them. Just because they are so desperate to get out of that 9th pick.
Which team? You said the Rams.
The Saints.
Okay.
Sorry, the Rams are another team that they always like to move around the board a little bit, but the Saints at 9, 20 and 51, that might be enough for them because they're so desperate to move down. They like this year they just need talent everywhere on that roster. It is so void of talent outside of a few guys that they just want to get younger and cheaper, especially to help with their salary cap situation. And the easiest way to do that is picks. But a team like the Bears, they may not be as willing to take 20 and 51 because of the way their roster is. There's a belief from many that the Bears believe, people believe the Bears believe kind of thing, that they're a piece or two away from being more competitive. So they may not be willing to pass up on one of these first round grades for extra picks, that they want that supreme talent. So they might not be willing to do it. 49ers, who knows with them. Cowboys, they're a team that they'll move around a little bit, but they don't like to drop super far. It's typically a few spots and then just let the board clear up a little bit. So we always talk about 2 to tango. It also depends on who that partner is as to what the cost is going to be and what they're okay with.
Shiloh says Clinton Portis was drafted at pick 51. Is that right? Did Clinton Portis fall to the second round that far for that profile? That's insane. I was very young. I remember being very young when the Broncos traded Clinton Portis, and I was very, very sad about that. And it turned out okay. And that kind of, left running backs don't matter taste in my mouth for a long time. So that's okay. We got it going here. Yeah, 51. That's insane. Shiloh, good memory on that one. Also, 20 overall was Garrett Bowles. Can we find a decade-long contributor at pick 20? That would be great. But talking about contributors, Eric, we're going to use the mock draft simulator today because we've done so much PFF, and I feel like the board is just kind of the board at this point with us. I want to go with something different on that one, so we're going to pull that up and then get on out of here. Otherwise, unless Jeremy would rather us do a full first-round mock. Jeremy, drop a super chat right now. Otherwise, it's going to be a full first-round mock. No, I'm just kidding. There we go. So let's get it going. We're going to hit go live, wherever that's at. Start. And we got it rocking and rolling here. Broncos, we're looking defensive line. We're looking, we're not going to do any trades either because the trades in the simulator are always, that would be very, very tempting to move down 2 spots.
I would
Scott Garrett.
100% take that to move down 2 spots.
Yeah, we're not going to do it because I don't like the simulator for that.
Yeah.
So we're sitting here at 20. Tedero McMillan's available. Jahdae Barron is available. Colston Loveland, Matthew Barron, the Broncos just met. Amarian Hampton's available. After that, Derek Harmon available. Emeka Egbuka. It's probably the end of the guys that make sense for the Broncos at 20 overall. So I'm going to suggest do we want to be predictive? Do we want to say Amarian Hampton? Do we think
I was going to ask
Loveland?
you, do you want to be different, or do you want to try to be predictive with this one?
I feel like we've never had a chance in the PFF one to take Tedero McMillan. And I know that we just talked about how deep wide receivers, and I think there'll be options later. But let's go Tedero McMillan. The Broncos, okay. Mike Klis just said Tedero McMillan, or not Tedero, wide receiver is more an option at 20 than I believed. Eyes emoji, whatever. And then you have Mel Kiper going Tedero McMillan too. So a little bit of synergy there with that. So let's go Tedero McMillan. Talked about him earlier. Why would that make sense? We get an A+ for it. We trust the board. We're just going for the best grade. We're going to be simps for the simulator here. We're sitting here now, 51. We're on the clock. The Chargers again, man. They really want to trade with us. No, thank you. We got Mason Taylor's available. Alfred Collins is available. Caleb Johnson's available. There's M'Bow. The running backs, unfortunately, have gone. The ones that are the top. Let me see. Let's click it here. Caleb Johnson, Scottaboo, Sampson, Martinez. The thing is, there's going to be a guy like round 3 out of that list there. I like Caleb Johnson a lot. I like Sampson a lot. I think he's an option at 51. But there's better players available, in my opinion. The best guy might actually be Savon Ravel, but I don't think we can do that for the chat. They'd get too mad at us. So I'm between Mason Taylor, Carson Schlesinger, Alfred Collins. I think those are the ones that stand out for me.
It's the 3 names that I was looking at as which way do we go. Mason Taylor, 20 years old, getting round 1 talk, late round 1 talk. I'm not sure he'll be here at this point. Daniel Jeremiah's consistently had him in his top 35. He's absolutely loved. Carson Schlesinger. My issue with him is that when you look at the way the linebacker room is built, he's more of that Dre Greenlaw type, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're drafting him, it's with the intent, with, injury of Greenlaw in mind. If he gets hurt, we have Schlesinger. I think with development, he could potentially take over Alex Singleton's kind of role in this defense a little bit, but I don't think he's the best option for that. But Alfred Collins, I talked about it earlier. This is a guy that comes in and he's a major boost to your run defense, which wasn't terrible last year in the season. They got absolutely demolished in the playoffs, which is what you kind of got to look at is you look at what the Bills offensive line did to the defensive front. And, Alfred Collins is essentially a game changer in that aspect of it. He really changes how teams have to play you with their run blocking schemes because you have such a force as a run defender there, which is going to trickle out and help the guys around him. So I think Alfred Collins is the way we go here.
I'm going to overrule you. I'm going to go Taylor. I'm going to go Taylor on this one because I want to see if we can hammer home Savion Jones. We're going to risk him falling to the 4th here. And I'm also risking here. I think we're going to go with one of your favorite players at round 3. I think Dylan Sampson's going to fall there. And I know how much you love Dylan Sampson. So I'm going to go Taylor here. I don't want the class to get so mad at us about running back, or the chat to get so mad at us about running back. So we had Tet and Mason Taylor. It's like, okay, we didn't get running back per se. We still have options. But look at these 2 weapons we got, Bo, right here in the pass game. I mean, God bless. And this is a defensive line guy. So
you're forcing a fantasy football mock draft in the first week.
I am. Okay. Right now I am. Yep, we're doing it for the likes here. Mason Taylor, again, you mentioned it. He could go 30 to 40. Yeah. And to get him at 51, it just feels too good to be true for me. So we'll see how the board falls here for the next one.
He's young. I mentioned that. And he's got NFL bloodlines, elite NFL bloodlines.
Yep.
And again, my scouting report out him is out. And if you guys read it, you can kind of tell that the cons to his game are just little things on all aspects that can, just develop a little bit more. So it's not, I don't dislike the pick at all. I mean, Mason Taylor or Alfred Collins, either way, I would be fine with it.
So, man, we got some interesting options here for the Broncos. I know that we talked about. Oh man, did my guy Savion Jones already go? Crazy. Can't click back to see, but I know that we're talking about running back here. People are going to freak out at us. Maybe this is one where it doesn't fall that way, but like Marcus Bow is such a good player. I don't know. He's blinking at me here. I feel like this is like a 40 picks too late for him. If not him, I'm interested in one of these defensive linemen, Joshua Farmer, or we also have Dylan Sampson here as well. Unfortunately, it looks like Damian Martinez left. Tootin interests me. Harvey interests me. Scatabo here is fine, but I think Sampson stands out for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to force a running back, I think you got to go Sampson. He's my number 2 running back. He's the guy
Wow.
that Lance Zierlein has higher than Omarion Hampton. He's a guy that Matt Waldman has higher than Omarion Hampton, and we talked about Omarion Hampton in the first. So Sampson at this point, I mean, I made the joke about forcing, the fantasy football mock draft, and then you start talking about defensive line. Just made me laugh a little bit, but
Yeah.
or Marcus Bow. Marcus Bow, I'd have to push back on. I don't see him working out in Denver. I don't think that the scheme fit is right for it. And offensive line is the one grouping where I think scheme fit really matters. I know you and we've talked about this privately. You're not as concerned about it as I am.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to go somebody in offensive lineman, I would rather go Tate Ratledge, who can play center, but I think he's going to be better at guard. And he's a guy who, you can have him come in and compete for center this year, but most likely you're looking at him to replace Ben Powers after this season. But yeah, Dylan Sampson getting that running back is the way I would go for Denver at this pick.
And why would I go Marcus Bow? I think he's the most tenacious offensive lineman in the entire class. He might have more takedown blocks than anybody in the class. Very fast hands. And we've seen it the last 2 years with the Broncos that they didn't have earth movers at center, and it still works pretty well. So now you get Bow who can be, as far as strength of the point attack at center, you can protect that. And then if Denver's going to keep using as much quick screen game as him, Bow is like one of the most weaponizable offensive linemen in the entire class as far as hitting the landmarks in space. So if you want to hit on a nickel player from your center in the screen game, I mean, he's so good. I also think he's still got right tackle ability. I mean, we think they big these earth moving guys for Sean Payton, but who was their best right tackle during his time out there in New Orleans? It was Ramczyk, not an earth mover, a technician. So we'll go Sampson here. But I did want to stand out for Bow, who I think he can play in any scheme, and I think he can be a unbelievably good center in the league. Maybe the hard part there is day one center. Be better if it was a team that had like a left guard need and then potentially kick the center later because it is new for him. But here we are for the Broncos, keeping it rocking and rolling here. Pick is coming up. We got another one. Sorry, no trade offers today. We're looking at the board here. We really need to get some defensive line in here. We got Anthony Belton. He's an interesting one. We talked about Gelati earlier. Good player. Jordan Phillips is available. Ty Robinson is available. Danny Stutzman available is a good one. Still got some good running backs available. We could double up on running back if we wanted. Jamari Caldwell is one I like a lot here. Also, we got JJ Pegas as well. What are you thinking?
We can get JJ Pegues and, just get that offensive weapon for Denver. I will mention that every single time. It is absolutely hilarious to me that at the Ole Miss Pro Day, he was introduced as an offensive weapon, not defensive weapon. He was introduced as an offensive weapon. Former tight end, caught passes from Bo Nix. I wouldn't do it at 122 in the 4th round. The defensive lineman specifically that stands out to me is either Jordan Phillips or Ty Robinson. They're two different types. Ty Robinson is more of that 3-4 defensive end type. Very similar to Zach Allen. He's a pretty better run defender than he is a pass rusher, but he's still a really good pass rusher. Jordan Phillips is more of that nose tackle, not as much two gapping though, which it brings a little bit pause to me. He's more of that gap and a half type nose tackle that we have in DJ Jones and Malcolm Roach. So I would lean Ty Robinson here a little bit, but I can definitely make the case for Jordan Phillips. Jamari Caldwell, he is more of that two gapping nose tackle type. But there's still some issues with him in that role. And another issue with him is that he's got some dirty weight on him that needs to be cleaned up. That's one thing that I've heard consistently mentioned is if you want him to survive with him inside, you need to clean up that dirty weight. It makes him leads to some balance issues. So Ty Robinson is actually the play I would lean there for the defensive lineman.
Okay, I'll throw out one more here for you. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. I know his range has been everywhere, but if you're talking 4-eye ability, he had some issues as far as a foot injury that got him discouraged, but he had probably the singular best combine out here. I think he was really like the number 2 defensive line recruit in the country, and his combination of size, length, and athleticism, he is sopping with potential. You don't need day one impact from this pick here.
Yep.
Am I crazy for listing him? I mean, I've heard people talk about him as a potential round 3 guy because the athletic profile is so good.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier about these guys that can be this edge and 4-eye type, and there's Ingram-Dawkins is one of those guys that could potentially do that for the Broncos. I often forget about him because in almost every single simulator, he's rated as a 7th round pick, and for me, he's going to be an early day 3 pick at the very least. So Ingram-Dawkins here, I would be perfectly fine with that too.
I think that's the way I go, just because I want a little bit more juice there, and I know he's got incredible highlights. I don't know what Jeremy's which one he's talking about here for trying to get fired, but I really want to go with him. I just wanted to see what the room looked like. I was really hoping for Savion Jones here. He must have got. I think he went even before the Broncos' 3rd round pick. But I know this. We're going to get a bad grade on this one. He's D+. I don't care. I think he's somebody who's going to go higher at the end of the day. Maybe he's talking about Marcus Bow. I like Bow. But Tyrion Dawkins, I think keep an eye out for him. Again, the athletic profile is crazy for him. Former really high recruit. Just look at the testing. The flashes are all there. I really like him. Okay, we're on the clock again here for the Broncos. Got a lot of interior offensive line options here. Got Elijah Roberts. Baron Sorrell is interesting down this far. We went with Sampson earlier, but Jaden Blue would be fine here. Sebastian Castro would be awesome here too. Brashard Smith would be awesome here. Isaac T. Can we go T-Slaw? I know we already went T-Mac, but like get another massive guy in here. Is that okay?
Yeah, give me T-Slaw.
Okay. All right, we picked that one. Still offering us moves here. I know that you got some pushback on Roberts when we talked about him as round 4, but I think right here this might be pretty good value for him. Another kind of 4-eye type. I don't care. Double dip. We're going to get it right.
Can you just look at the defensive lineman?
Yeah.
I mean, I know Roberts is part of it, but he's kind of the cross for it. Simeon Barrow Jr., he's another guy who is getting a lot of talk as moving up as a defensive lineman who tested extremely well at the pro day, which you got to take the pro day with a grain of salt. He is one of those guys that when you talk about combine snubs, guys who weren't invited to the combine, he is one that's very often mentioned. But Simeon Barrow out of Miami, he's the guy that I think is not getting enough attention. Good player, good athlete, sky's the ceiling type for a late round pick. And, talking about a developmental guy who can eventually replace John Myers or help ease the transition of all these guys who are free agents next year at the position. I really like Simeon Barrow here.
I think we can wait for the next pick for him. We have one more. Is there somebody higher up on the board that gets you rolling here? Sebastian Castro this low is pretty crazy value, even though we don't really need a safety. I think he might be an interesting one. Chase Lunt, offensive tackle. Sorrell. I mean, Jaden. I mean, and you said Jaden Blue earlier. Just get more speed in there. I think we can get this off defensive tackle later.
What about interior offensive line?
I just looked at it.
I think with 6th round picks, I don't think it with them being so close together. I don't think it really matters a whole lot.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's a name specifically that I was looking for, and I didn't quite see it there.
You looking for Gray?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gone. I was looking for him too.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. There's
tight ends really good. Still also like Jackson Hawes, Jalen Conyers, Urasek, Lachey. A lot of good tight ends still available.
Gavin Bartholomew.
Yeah.
Like he's a quality blocker. He's kind of, One of those guys that can be a big slot or work as an inline tight end. Jackson Haas is more of that inline tight end blocker type. Jalen Conyers is more of an offensive weapon. He's played Wildcat quarterback, great athlete. So I'll leave it up to you. You can go whichever way that you want to go.
I'm going to go Haas because we want to be physical. And I think he also can contribute in special teams to a great extent. And then you wanted to go Barrow? Let's do it. Boom, boom. So there we go. I appreciate Mock Draft, the simulator here, giving us a different one to hear and different players, different spots. The one that they don't love is Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. I don't know, man. I just feel like the upside is really high with him on that one. So Bo Nix should be happy. The Broncos offense gets a lot of good. I think I'd be happy with this overall. I think you got good value on all of them. So very, again, I always roll my eyes, the fantasy football oriented mock, but draft good players at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, and then the whole thing with Ingram Dawkins getting a D+, I think it's just because no one has really, moved him up. At the combine, even before he was doing the testing, he was a guy that I believe Peter Schrager mentioned as a guy that teams are really excited about as an early day 3 pick. And they're excited to see what he's going to do, with his testing. That he's a guy that didn't get to see the field as much as you would expect for a guy with his traits and ability because of playing at Georgia and how ridiculously deep they are up front. So he's a guy that's getting pushed down for it. And I just don't think that he's getting enough attention publicly for, the mock draft simulators all around on almost every single one that's out there to give him the bump that he so rightfully deserves to where he wouldn't be a D+ there.
Yeah, and he was the 11th highest rated relative athletic score interior defensive lineman. The only area where he's red is the weight at 276. Get him up 280, 285, but just under 6'5", 36 vertical, which is the 99th percentile. The broad of 10 foot and 4 inches, 99.8th percentile. So like the second or third best of all time for an interior defensive lineman. 40-yard dash, 486, 95th percentile. 10-yard split of 169, 92nd percentile. We actually have the agilities as well. 434 shuttle, 97th percentile. 3-cone of 728, 95th percentile. Dude's just a freak. If he has his head right, it really comes down like head and heart. Like if he's a bozo and doesn't work, then like whatever. Like no thanks. But I don't know. That's the type of guy in round 4 that is worth a worthwhile lottery ticket. So appreciate everyone. We're going to get out of here. Make sure you're following Eric and I on Twitter. Eric is at Erick Trickel. I'm at Kendell MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. We're at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Please subscribe, like, and share as that ticker says there underneath. And of course, thanks for the super chats. Shiloh coming in $20. Michael Ronquillo, Troy Boer, Shiloh again with an additional one. Appreciate you guys. We're going to get on out of here. We'll see you again next Monday. Have a fantastic one. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.